Good to go.
Greetings and salutations. Coffee time with Guillermo, my friend, and Tony at the camera, and Teddy Tarr here, one of your neighborhood psychologists. Today we're going to talk about the giving tree. Rather, the grieving trees. It was the giving tree, but today we have a lot of grieving trees. Lots of losses, and I decided that this would be a good time to talk a little bit about losses, and if you haven't had a loss, maybe you know someone who has had a loss, and you can help them through it. We'll have some tips. Would you like to talk about the book?
Yes. Well, again, Teddy did a great job putting my book together, so I can read it, and I would be happy to read the book. But I can tell you from the beginning that not everyone is going to agree on this particular book.
No.
But it is something to think about. If you give, and someone continues to take, you're not creating the relationship you dream of, and when you try to stop, you will elicit such hostility. Better never to find yourself in that place. Better to have a talk and cut back what has created these particular issues. Once there was a tree, and she loved the little boy. A story of unforgettable perception. Every day the boy will come to the tree, eat her apples, swing from her branches, or slide down her trunk. And the tree was happy. As the boy grew older, he wanted more from the tree, and the tree gave. Affecting interpretation of the gift of giving, and serene acceptance of this capacity for love in return. In the beginning, the relationship was pretty mutual. The boy collected the leaves, the boy played with the tree, up her trunk, swung from her branches, and ate her apples, played hide and seek, sleep in the shade, and the boy loved his tree, hugs, and the tree loved the boy. The heart at the bottom, by the boy, the tree, and me, oh, how happy this tree was. As time goes by, the boy becomes a man, now has a friend, a girlfriend, and often the tree was alone. Good thing to have a whole friend group, and I guess the tree needs to find an orchid.
He needs more of a selection,
More selection. So the story moves on as the boy visits the tree, invites the boy to engage in some things, and the boy says, I want to buy things and have fun. I want some money. The tree suggests he sell the apples that came from the tree. You will have money and you will be happy. Two hearts, one tree. Has left the friend, or she left. The apples now are gone and the tree's happy and very purposefully tree. Talk about a happy tree for the moment. Sad tree needed therapy, right?
Yeah, because the boy left
Because
again.
the boy left again. So take, and don't receive.
Yeah.
One day the boy's back. The tree filled with joy. Be happy. Come boy, climb up my trunk. Swing my branches and be happy. And the boy says, I'm too busy. Another request. I need a house. I want a wife and children. The tree responding, the forest is my house. You may cut off my branches, you may build a house, then you will be happy. Yep. Cut all of the branches and the boy stay away for a long time. But eventually he returned. And now the happy tree. The tree could hardly speak. Come boy, she whispered, come and play. The boy, I am too old and sad to play. I want a boat that will take me far away from here. Can you give me a boat? The dumb tree. Cut down my trunk and make a boat, said the tree. You can sail away and be happy. And the boy cut down her trunk, made a boat, and sailed away. And the tree was happy. But not really, because they have been taking advantage of him.
A little bit.
A lot, I would say, but not really.
Depending on whether you're the boy or the
Or the
tree.
tree. A long time passes and the boy returns. The tree says, I am sorry, boy, but I have nothing left to give you. And marches through the entire list of what the tree has freely given. And ends with, I am sorry, said the tree. I wish I could give you something, but I have nothing left. I'm just an old stump. And the boy, I just need a quiet place to sit and rest. I am very tired. Well, said the tree, straightened herself up as much as she possibly could, an old stump is good for sitting and resting. And she becomes the boy, and the boy did, and the tree was happy. Only one heart left on the tree, on the stump.
Yeah, only one heart.
So we might judge this tree-boy relationship as codependent, danger ahead, and honestly, trying to interfere is next to impossible. It is well cemented over time. All we can do is eventually comfort the tree. Self-righteousness, having all the answers not only for ourselves but for others is judgmental and disrespectful. That doesn't mean we couldn't help someone if asked, to widen a circle of love and interest.
So the point is how difficult it is if you're one of the standby people and you see this thing happening and you'd like to intervene, but you know that you're going to get your head cut off if you say one word.
One wrong word.
One word. So your best shot is to wait it out and see whether or not that person, whether the tree will give you an opening.
But you know what? This is a lesson, because in life, if the person only takes, and sometimes things are taken away from that person becomes a whole different person.
Yeah. Also, I have found, at least in here, that I have clients I have to put on what I call moratorium. They're not allowed even to give a card because they tend to be such givers, and they're not aware of how important it is to have mutuality. That if you give something, someone else gives something. And it's very hard. They have a very hard time holding back. Sometimes it's not the other person asking, it's that they are so giving. But we need to know that if we create a monster, it's our monster.
It's our monster, and when you try to take it back,
oh, forget it.
It becomes a problem.
All right, so
Okay.
we have this poem that I really love.
Okay, this is a great poem. I forgot my glasses, but I do my best.
Okay, good enough.
Okay. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you're kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you're successful, you will win some false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. What you spend years building, they may destroy it overnight. Build it anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous and scorn be joyous anyway. The good you do today, they often will forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give the world the best you have got anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. And this was done and attributed to Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa, which was one of the finest people that the world can look at.
You know, I think what's really hard to understand is that we come out of our childhoods with defense mechanisms that work for us as children and young adults. And if we're used to being the only one who's giving, let's say we've grown up with a lot of problems in our childhood, and we're the ones who's taking care of the family, and we're the one who's supporting the family in some ways, even in our 20s. And then we marry somebody who is a taker. It works really well for us because we came out being the giver. And it's very hard for us to recognize that two givers don't always get together, and two takers can't get together. And so trying to work through some of those issues in a relationship, before a relationship, after a breakup. Most important if it's possible. So, ambivalence. I want to talk a little bit about ambivalence. Should I stay or should I go? Mixed emotions. Having these feelings that I can't always make a decision. I can't always look at things. Seeking help, professional help sometimes, advice from people we trust. It's not about having solved a problem immediately, but we can be in a quandary. We can keep putting things up and down until we have made a decision by just not making a decision. So when we become fixated on something, an issue, and we become, for instance, here's a tree in a situation you can't really, I mean, the tree's not going to leave the forest. So I realized
walk away.
it can't go looking for another boy. I mean, it might trip a boy coming through the woods. Sometimes it helps to take the energy out. Sometimes if we have a relationship, or just to pull the energy back and not try to make a decision, not push ourselves into it. And looking more in terms of other things that we can add, advice that we can get, maybe going online and looking for answers. Losses are tremendous for us. This ambivalence that the boy, I'm sure the tree had, and the boy was sad. You know, the amazing part about the boy's getting everything, but he's sad.
But he's sad anyway.
He's sad all the time.
But you know
he's
what?
sadder than the tree.
But I think part of that is because he had no sense of accomplishments by himself.
There you go.
If you really think about it, the things that we value the most is the one that we work for, that we accomplish ourselves.
Yeah, that's right. So part of it is recognizing that the dependency
Yes.
that the boy had on the tree. So I love, I'm sad, I love, I'm sad. In this case of the tree, clearly the relationship wasn't going to go out looking for another one. He couldn't look for another relationship. But sometimes what we can do is we can help somebody add more things that they're missing so that they're not so dependent on just one thing. Also, we need to have respect for individual differences. It's real important to know that changing someone else's beliefs about something, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to have to take it slowly, otherwise they'll end the relationship. They won't tell you anymore anything. They won't share with you. There is no such thing as healing mouths. There's only healing ears. There's nothing people can say to really do a lot of healing. So we moved to loss. I asked Guillermo what was the greatest loss, or one of the losses, a profound loss that he had. I thought maybe you'd share that with us.
I think one of my greatest loss was losing my niece for cancer at 23 years old.
So young.
Yeah, she was young and she was full of life, and I think everybody loved her because she was just a natural girl and so pleasant to be around. And it was a great loss for all of us as a family, especially for my sister. And it takes years to get away from a loss like that.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of you take a lot of responsibilities to trying to help others after a loss like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, if I had to think back, that's probably one of my biggest losses.
I think we talked about in one of the other videos that the loss doesn't start with the death. The loss starts with the diagnosis, or the first time someone has symptoms and is worried about something.
And seeing her deteriorate to
Right.
time is a great loss too, because you know there's nothing you can do about it.
No matter what. And when you look on TV and you see people in all these homes or in the hospital on these respiratory things around the world, I mean, there's such a sadness. And what got to me this past week was seeing the child come up to the officer and ask if he was going to kill her.
There you go.
I don't know if that touched anyone. Did that touch your heart?
Absolutely.
Tony, yours too? That for me was such a touching moment. I didn't know if anyone else felt that way.
I think a lot of people felt that way.
Yeah. And the feeling, the loss here was one of security. It was a loss of security and trusting, and she obviously, I mean, he answered in the most profound way he could. And I just wanted to mention that losses aren't only death. Losses are losses of jobs, losses of friendships, lots of losses. Having a friend that you have an argument with because you don't get along with them, or when they have a different political view, letting people escape, not having those individual differences honored, and to still be able to forgive people for not thinking like you are. Collective grief. Our marches are collective grief. People with the same ideas and the same hurtful feelings. And I think I saw something that like 80% of the population has joined in a collective grief, even people who aren't necessarily marching.
Right.
People have joined in a collective grief. The one unique feature we share as humans is that we have the idea of a future. You know, I don't think the marching is for the moment. I think some people have misunderstood that. The marching for the moment isn't getting anywhere, anyone, even the marchers. They're marching for the future change that can come about from collective grief and over the years and how they felt. over what's been happening in the unfairness of society. So, family and friends. There was an old hanging in a church, and I wish I had taken the whole article. This was years ago. But we think that we're all alone and we're the only one with values, or we're the only one that believes this. And I remember that parchment that was hanging in the church. You're not alone. There are a lot of people like you, and it's just a matter that we don't always meet with them. So grief is not an entity. It's not something inside us we go in and have surgery and have it removed. And we manage it uniquely, and we manage it culturally, and we manage it according to the relationship. And the loss can define us and describe us for a long time, and it can also change over time. But a death never takes off the relationship. It changes the relationship. Some of us are very quiet and private, and others are very verbal and expressive. It doesn't change the fact that we can still grieve quietly and not say very much. I remember when I was in mourning one time, and I remember having a client and I was in mourning, and I had a grief practice, so it was not a problem with me also being sad that particular time. And I remember the client saying, "It seems like you're over whatever it was." And I just went over to my music, and I pushed the button, and it was all bereavement song. She said, "It's okay, you can turn the music off." It was all very, very sad music. So sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. A song can be worth 1,000 words. For a time, we can lose ourselves. That isn't uncommon in bereavement. And by the way, people can get very angry with us. And you know what the truth is? It's not that they mind us grieving. They hate that we're not there for them. So what they want is they want us back, and they want to fix it, and somehow they want to say something that'll make us feel better. It's not that they mean a disrespect. It's just that they don't know really how to comfort us. And they just want us to get over it. Please, just get over it. Get back to who you were. I'm worried about you. Often they'll say an inappropriate thing like, "Well, you know, John wouldn't want you to be sad. You know, John would have loved it if I was crying the rest of my life." So a lot of times the things that are said are not things that are helpful.
Exactly.
So it's quite a journey to mourn, and unfortunately, no one really knows the cost of someone else's grief. And by the way, no one really wants to pay for someone else's bereavement in therapy usually. So there's a lot of help, self-help online. There are lots of books. There are lots of ways, music and ways to manage our grief. Time in and of itself, which is the old saying, time will heal. No, time doesn't heal. Time gives us time to heal. I remember I was running a group one time, and this woman was sitting next to me, and it was a professional group of all nurses. I think I had like 22 nurses. She was sitting next to me, and she said, "You know, Petey died 20 years ago, and I've never been able to get over it." And I'm listening, and she says, "And you know, I could never find a bird like Petey." I froze my face. I knew everybody in that group was looking at me and was going to judge whatever that. And for her, the only thing she had was her bird.
Right.
So instead of being judgmental, understanding that if the loss is your loss and you feel it, it doesn't really matter how anyone else feels. For instance, I lost my job. You know, the thing to say is, "Oh, you'll find another one." No, what you want to say, "I'm so sorry.
Right.
Tell me about the job. What were the things you liked about it? Was there anything you didn't like? Had you ever thought about looking for another career?" You want to be helpful and not hurtful and not disrespectful. So Ecclesiastes 3:1-8, I think, tells it in the Old Testament all about life and the losses we have ongoing. And even more to the point, the one I like the best, Ecclesiastes 9:11. Calamity can fall upon us unexpectedly and undeserved. It rains on everyone. Some people, we call it hopeless, helpless, hapless. Hopeless is, "I don't believe this will ever go away." Hapless is, "It always happens to me." And helpless, hopeless, hapless. Hopelessness is the worst of all because we have apathy and we don't think we can ever have any help. So it can make us feel helpless and make us not want to look for for other things to invest in. The pathway of healing, no, there's not one pathway. There are lots of ways to heal. Culturally, dependent on the relationship, we can be trapped. We can trap the grief inside us and not externalize it. Your niece, if you were sitting at the table and you were talking about your niece, what would the things be? How young
She
how
was,
wonderful.
how much life she had left in her,
Yeah.
what joy
How did she
brought.
face her death? Yeah, because it hurts a lot to see someone who is suffering. You know, we talk about anticipatory mourning. When we know someone is dying, we can prepare a little. But a lot of times we have a phone call,
And boom.
and yeah, they're gone from an accident or whatever.
And that's really, I also experienced the fact of a mother receiving a call when I was there that her daughter had died in a car accident. That is incredibly
Brutal.
brutal. That is brutal.
No time.
No time to
A
prepare.
senseless death. You know, one thing about if you've lost somebody in the service, I'm not saying that's easier, by no means. You've already worried about them, they've gone away and such, but you have a sense that that person died for something,
Right.
and the death was meaningful. And the grief, it's not that it's going to be lessened, but there is some comfort in that. And there's not much comfort in a death that someone shot, someone you love, someone has killed somebody, there's a homicide. Anything that involves a homicide is not in any way helpful. Personally, facing the loss head on is the best way to do it, to put yourself right straight in front of it and slowly try and take it. The brain doesn't like anything that takes us away from our regular routine lives. So what it does, it takes a dropper, and it drops a dropper at a time of grief on itself until, we call it adaptive grief, adaptive mourning, in order for us to get through it. That's how we're able to get through the funeral. That's how we're able to do things that we never knew we could even do after a tremendous loss. What to say? Sometimes a card just saying, I'm so sorry, thinking of you. Very small.
To the point.
Yeah, to the point, not too flowery, not saying
to
too
elaborate.
much, not to elaborate. I remember when I was running some groups for Baptists, I was running, I think I had like 20 people maybe, and the next time, they knew that I had had a loss. I didn't tell anybody at that time, but the next time I put it out that I had had a loss, everything I got in my email was absolutely perfect. It was short, it was to the point, they had learned their lesson, not to give a lot of advice, not to give any, not to say anything about their own losses. We have a tendency, if somebody says, I had this loss, well, I lost my mother. Well, we expect our mother to die in her 90s, but we don't expect to have a 23-year-old niece die. So sometimes asking then, would you like to go to lunch? You know, do you mind if I stop by? Things that are more question and giving someone a choice and not trapping them. And certainly not trying to pull out anything that would be suggestive that they have to get over this. If you're going to give out a book, make sure you've read it. And make, yeah.
At least read it.
It really helps a lot, rather than something that, you know, you've just picked and you think it's going to be good. I have found most of the books, I like a lot of the older things, only because most of the books go from, here's the death, and now here's how to get through it and over it, rather than, here's the mourning. And the mourning is this much, and really, being able to handle it is way over here. It's not anything different. We tend, when people do that, we tend not to talk to them. We just don't say anymore. I try and tell people, though, there's no point in distancing somebody, saying something, getting angry. If they're trying to give you some comfort, just thank them and say, thank you, I know you love me. Because the same group of people, those are the people who you had a relationship with before and want to have one again. You don't want to kill off everyone. Also, when you're going back to work, and you expect the person that's been paying you for doing a job to be empathetic, sympathetic, no, not apathetic. They might say something like, gee, I'm glad you're back. Is there anything, but really, you're there to do a job. And I think a lot of times we feel badly because people stop asking us, they stop caring, but you're there to do a job, they're not gonna do that. And if you think, I'm just gonna quit, I've heard people tell me, I'm just gonna quit this job because nobody cares this happened to me. I try and explain, it's not that they don't care. They're paying you. Yeah. They feel that their caring is in the check, it's not in anything else. So, a book of poetry, a song, thinking of you, anything, dramatic reading, something that you can send that they have a choice of reading or whatever. Take a clue from the bereaved. If they're not talking about it and they don't want to talk about it, don't talk about it. If you knew the deceased, if, for instance, let's say you have somebody that's marching and you're not marching, and it'd be nice if you let them talk about it. You don't even have to agree with the marching. It's understanding we're all different, we all have a different way of seeing and doing things. But if you don't ask anyone about anything at all, they assume that you don't care.
You're not interested.
You're not interested in hearing it at all. The trees I put on my website, those are my trees. I designed those trees. And they're not the ones that love the boy, by the way. They don't have any hearts at the bottom of it. Ambivalent relationships where we carry so much guilt and shame and somebody dies, those are the worst possible relationships to heal from. So for sure, if somebody's dying, if you're dying, you want to clear the air as much as you can with whoever it is. If you can clear the air, be a good idea. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting with somebody and maybe trying to forgive for the relationship. Maybe something, I shoulda, coulda, oughta. We tend to have a lot of guilt and shame anyway in relationships. We just do this. We think because somebody's died, that's over. It isn't over. It just isn't over.
It might be the beginning.
It could be the beginning.
It could be the beginning.
Absolutely. And like for instance, somebody's an alcoholic and they've given up the alcohol now, and you have a relationship and 6 months later they die. You're angry now that you didn't get a chance to spend the time with that person. Sometimes memories are intrusive and unwanted, and we could have trouble controlling them. Sometimes it helps to be able to write a journal to journal. It certainly helps to look for resources. There are lots more resources than when I started out in bereavement. In the beginning, like I said, the brain uses an eyedropper, and that's the way it handles it, small amount of time. Later on, everything bothers you. You go into Publix, and everything you ever bought for that person is going to be hitting you with bereavement. It's going to attach bereavement to it. And that's, we think we're going crazy when that happens. It's just the norm. That's how we managed to hold it together and to get through the funeral and the memorial service. But we can't get through Publix. It's just amazing. And if you have, well, in olden days it was a beeper. Now it's a cell phone. Now you don't want to give up anything that person had. You want to make a shrine in the bedroom. I would advise that if you have someone who's doing that, shh, loose lips sink ships. Don't say a word. Let someone come to their own place. Sometimes in time they'll want to. Sometimes, I don't worry about that even in here, if someone is living and has a shrine. If it's only the shrine and they're in the room and they're staying there, we might have a teensy-weensy problem. But if they're managing to have a life along with it, I never ever say anything. When the sorrow and suffering continues to overcome us, we sometimes find comfort in creating more meaning in our lives. Sometimes we actually have to change professions, or we have to find a way, maybe a project in that person's name. We maybe have to find maybe a donation, maybe a star, a tree. Funny, I am always going back to trees since the giving tree. Because you can plant a tree in someone's name. Yeah, there are lots of things you can do. It's a lonesome journey. I'm not suggesting it isn't. Remember, it's not always just human loss. It could be a pet loss. By the way, don't compare. It's not like if someone says something and they say, I lost my dog, and you're thinking, well, I lost my husband. It's not the same as losing a dog. Yeah. Don't think they're comparing that loss. They're trying to tell you they know what grief
They know.
is. They're not comparing that a human loss and a pet loss. Although pet parents, those are their children. And I would not take one of them on if I were you.
And they probably love them more.
They may. Remember, that pet is sitting at the door waiting for them. And not to be cavalier in any way, because I've always been a pet person, and I don't even want to talk about Tony and the number of pets he has. He has like a zoo and a menagerie and everything else at home. Maybe he'll put some of those on
On the video.
on the video, yeah. Especially the rats. He has a couple of rats. You'd have to get to know Tony. He's a little different. Okay, they cannot be compared with anyone else. You can't compare grief, you can't compare losses, and I think if you're in a circle and people are talking about their different losses, have respect for that. No one is trying to take away your grief. Don't let them if they try. Perhaps one of life lessons I have learned, certainly not mastered in my life, that it helps a lot to compensate for goodbyes, knowing that a broken heart leaves room for others. The last thing you want to be is a person who walks around as the walking wounded and never wants to love again anyone or do anything because of a loss. That is the worst possible thing. Guillermo, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think we need to grieve when we have to.
Yeah.
We need to let others grieve when they have to. Don't try to tell them not to grieve, because you're stopping their process of making progress through what they want to do.
And all losses, losses are not just human. They can be pets. They can be
Anything.
loss of a job. I think there's right now something we all have in common. There's more anxiety right now. Anxiety for our future, because we don't really know whether we're going to get this virus back or whether it's ever going to go away or whatever. So there are a lot of unknowns, and the brain doesn't like, by the way, spaces.
Right.
It wants the story to be full, and it will fill in wherever it can. And people with anxiety right now are even more anxious. And we just need to help them. We can't tell them that we know what the future is going to be, but we can help them talk to themselves and be able to relax a little, find something that'll help them be a little calmer during this time.
And be supportive.
And be supportive, yeah. Sometimes just listening to somebody is everything. Thank you so much for tuning in to us.
Thank you.
Alright guys, I just finished reading The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. I want to know what you guys think. Jaime?
Well, I changed my mind. I love the story.
Aw.
Yep. It wasn't that boring. Just the only part that I didn't like is when the tree got cut off. Yeah, I didn't like that.
Aw, yeah. But the tree was still happy to give everything to the little boy.
Yes, I know.
What about you, Tito? Tell me, what do you think of the story?
Give the gift tree.
The Giving Tree. What do you think about it?
What's this? Is it apple?
Mm-hmm. It's an apple tree.
Is the apple falling?
Yep, it's falling.
And he wants to catch it. Look at
Yeah.
Pikachu.
So what do you think of the story?
What? I thought he looked.
You like it?
Yeah, I like it.
Alright, Robert, what do you think?
I like it. It's a good story. It teaches you to be thankful.
That's a great lesson, right?
Yeah.